So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for still being with us this afternoon of the European Space Conference. It's my pleasure to introduce the next panel on sustainably securing orbits, space surveillance and in-orbit capabilities, and in particular, the moderator, Mrs. Sara Dalle Donne, who's the lead on EU relations and regulatory affairs at ESPI. Please, Sara.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. I will just start with a brief introduction by saying that space is, of course, no longer a strategic enabler of defense, and we have heard many, many times that it's actually becoming one of the pillars for an European long-lasting strategic autonomy. Today, Europe is really looking for collectively committing to building resilience, competitive and sovereign space ecosystem. An ecosystem that is able to protect critical assets, that is able to sustain operation over time, and prepare for the next generation of mission. So how we can do that sustainably and securely? The objective, at least from my side, is clear. It's to develop space surveillance and it's develop in-orbit service that strengthen capabilities, enhance resilience, and ensure European freedom to act in orbit. Achieving this will require many, many criteria, and those include, of course, sustain investment in capabilities and in talent, extend the industrial capacity, and closer cooperation between new space, institution, defense stakeholder, and many others. To introduce the topic, I have the great pleasure to have a video from Aarti Holla-Maini, director of UNOOSA. Please join us on watching the video.
Distinguished colleagues and friends, I'm delighted to join the European Space Conference to share the perspective of the United Nations on a topic that goes to the heart of our mandate. We can no longer treat sustainability as a technical aspiration and security as a standalone strategic debate. In today's space environment, they are two sides of the same coin. Congestion, competition, and counter-space realities all interact in the same orbital lanes, affecting the same satellites and the same services that our societies rely on every day. At UNOOSA, the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, our motivations are driven first and foremost by the need to maintain peace in space. Interference between systems or a collision in Earth or on or around the Moon could so easily escalate into conflict that we simply cannot afford to have. Across civilian, commercial, and defense domains, our dependence on space systems continues to deepen year on year, especially with increasing disasters and severe weather events. And therein lies the second large motivator for the UN. The need to safeguard the orbital environment for all states, including those who are just venturing into their space journey and those who may not yet have satellites or space agencies, but who nonetheless rely on space services for so many different applications and needs. From the UN perspective, a congested and poorly coordinated orbital environment is inherently unstable. Misunderstanding becomes more likely, escalation risks rise, and the probability of avoidable harm increases. By contrast, transparency, predictability, and responsible behavior are amongst the strongest stabilizing factors that we have. This is where global space governance, as led by the United Nations through COPUOS, the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, becomes operationally relevant. For more than 60 years, COPUOS has been the central multilateral forum where states have, by consensus, developed the legal frameworks, norms, and practices that govern activities in outer space. It's also one of the rare multilateral fora which today, despite geopolitical tensions, continues to deliver progress. The 5 UN space treaties born of COPUOS are still the backbone of space governance today. They might be old, but they're by no means out of date. They are coming to life now more than ever before, as states are facing real operational challenges. Close approaches in orbit, the re-entry of debris onto their national territory, questions of responsibility for national activities, and the protection of space infrastructure. At UNOOSA, we're seeing this firsthand. States are turning to the office more frequently when incidents occur, not just when they're drafting policy. When debris re-enters onto their territory, for example, when space traffic coordination fails for them, and when clarity is needed on rights and responsibilities. These are no longer just theoretical legal discussions. They are real-world situations where predictable frameworks and trusted channels of communications matter. Accordingly, COPUOS continues to evolve. States have moved beyond broad principles towards work that is increasingly operational. They are turning their attention to the implementation of the long-term sustainability guidelines, for example, in particular under Guideline B. In this context, COPUOS has recently established an expert group on space situational awareness to support information sharing, the designation of points of contact, and coordination for space safety. This is significant not just because operators are calling for a global solution, but because it is designed to connect governmental decision-making with operational expertise that resides firmly with industry. The goal, within a tight and clearly defined framework, is to converge on a global approach to space traffic coordination that reflects operational realities while remaining firmly anchored in multilateral governance. Similarly, COPUOS has established an action team for lunar sustainability to ensure lunar traffic and surface information sharing and coordination. We should remember that surveillance alone doesn't deliver space safety. Safety comes from coordination. Coordination requires trust, shared expectations and frameworks for information sharing and decision-making that work across political boundaries and across operational cultures. This cannot be achieved unilaterally or regionally. It must be built through the multilateral process. One of the key challenges that we see is implementation of global space law frameworks. There's a whole body of space law that exists from treaties to principles to recommendations and guidelines, but national implementation remains uneven. Licensing practices across countries differ widely. Information sharing remains fragmented. And many states are still building the legal and institutional capacity they require to regulate activities effectively and to participate confidently in coordination mechanisms, often with UNOOSA support through our Global Space Law project. Sustainably securing orbits therefore means closing the gap between principles and practice. It means strengthening trust and transparency, embedding due regard into day-to-day operational decisions. And it means recognizing that multilateral governance is not a constraint, but an essential enabler in an increasingly complex domain. I'm sorry that I can't join you in person, but I hope that these reflections help frame your discussions today. Thank you for having me with you.
A lot has already been said, but to continue the conversation, I have the great pleasure to invite on stage Rodolphe Muñoz as a team leader for SSA and STM at the DEFIS, European Commission. Welcome. Rolf Dunsting, Director of Operation at the European Space Agency. Chiara Manfletti, Chief Executive Officer at Neuraspace. Welcome. Alberto Agueda, Director of Space Surveillance and Traffic Management at GMV. Jean-Luc Maria, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Exotrail. And last but not least, Philippe Blatt, President and Managing Director of Astroscale France. Welcome all and thank you for joining. I would like to start the conversation with you, Rodolphe. In particular, when we look at the EU SSA component, of course, it has the objective of monitoring and preventing hazard with its 3 subcomponents on space weather, near-Earth object, and SST. Plus, we have ISOs with the Horizon Europe program, and we are quite in an interesting moment. I mean, it was just celebrated the 10 years of the establishment of the USST partnership. You had an event on ISOs in December and many evolution in terms of space weather services. What's the ambition? What's next? Especially, how do we see this program to evolve when looking at the next MFF?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for staying for one of the last panel. So here, regarding the SSA, it's true that it became a flagship only in 2021. So the question was, can we perform or not? And I will start just quickly with space weather and NEO, then I will go on SST to show a bit the evolution. So on space weather and NEO, teaming up with ESA, We managed to deliver because we will have this year the first space weather call in order to develop a space weather service, and this is to see how space weather could affect satellites and the space environment. So these demonstrate, and it was a target to develop a practical pre-operational service, and we did it. So, we really work hands to hand with ESA on that one, and it's really important to say that we managed to deliver together on that one. On SST, I think it's a perfect example of how you can achieve something if you team up. And team up means to use member state capabilities and as well to use the Commission in order to help the development of member state and commercial capabilities. And there, I want to say that we started with 5 member states delivering the services. Now we are 19. We started with a system where we had no commercial data at all. Now we have more than 60 sensors from delivering data from the commercial side. And of course, we have now as well with EUSPA as a front desk, plus on the member state side, and it's very important to underline that we are working with the civil side, but as well the military side, which is quite one, let's say in 2021, it was one of the unique flagship really working with military. And there, basically, what do we have today? Today, we are following more than 630 satellites. 200 of them are from non-EU. We are, as well, with re-entry, we have more than 200 organizations there. In November 2022, we had to stop the air traffic, North Spain, south of France, because of a re-entry. And today, just now, we are now following a new re-entry of a big object. So you can have a look on EUSST social media, where we are showing that indeed we need to follow this new object, which will re-enter roughly on the 30th of January. So basically, to give you an idea, today you have 100 people working full-time to deliver 24/7 services and free of charge on SST. This is very important. And what are concretely the result is to dodge 4,500 what we call high-interest event, high risk of collision, to follow more than 100 re-entry like this. Some of them are for small objects, but others for really big objects, which could lead, as I said, to the closure or really of the air traffic. So in a way, we can say that we have delivered what we want to do now with next MFF or ECF. It's, I think, in 2018, when the Commission put this proposal, SSA and SST was a nice to have, let's be honest. Now is a need to have. We need to have it. Is everybody understand it? When I had to convince my masters or member state in 2018, I had to explain why we need SSA, SST. Now there is no need. It's, yes, we need to have it. And we need to be more autonomous. This is very important. We need to have our own catalog, really autonomous. Today we are working very well with our US colleagues, I have to say it, I always say it. But we need to develop a more autonomous catalog. For that, it's easy, brackets. We need more sensors. We need more industry delivering as well data. And for that, we need a bigger budget, of course. And in order to be more autonomous, and autonomous to do what? To protect our asset in space.
Thank you. So if on one side we are actually looking at the ECF, and so starting looking at what's the type of ambition in that sense, on the other sense, looking at ESA and in particular to you, Rolf. 1 year ago, we had this conversation about what was the ambition for the CM25, and now, 1 year later, we see that actually the space safety program was oversubscribed, so congratulations for that. It's an enormous achievement. Now my question is, what do we do with this budget? What are the implementing actions that we have in mind for the next 3 years?
Well, indeed, space safety was very well subscribed, actually oversubscribed at the ministerial. It feels good to have the trust of our member states if they invest in a program. So now we have to deliver. We have to manage the growth and the wealth, and we are determined to do so. For people who are familiar with processes in ESA, we have the Industrial Policy Committee today, and I guess about 50% of 30% of our program proposal goes into the procurement phase today. So what 2 months for ESA standards is pretty fast, 2 months after the ministerial, and there's more to come. So now it needs industry to implement decisions, and we need to bring the money that we generously got from our member states to industry. So you are the ones in industry that have to help us to implement what we promised and proposed at the ministerial conference. What is the content? So to a large extent, we continue what we have started. I'd like to come back to space weather. Rodolphe, you mentioned this. Space weather, just as the whole subject, it's not a nice to have, it's essential these days. It's a dual use capability that we need to have. And so we will be completing a space weather observatory, 24/7 observatory in Lagrange Point 5, 150 million kilometers away from Earth. No one has ever been there before. And this, together with observational capabilities of our US friends, is very powerful and is very much required for dual-use applications. So we would like to do this in partnership with the EU, with member states, with EUMETSAT, and we are talking about it. We are doing pretty well, but we will do even better, I would say. We will cooperate even closer. Then we have activities underway, like active debris removal. Taking out of orbit an old satellite, actually a PROBA satellite, still functioning, but this is the target. We want to take it out. This is also a dual-use capability and also a matter of sustainability. Rendezvous, docking, grappling, and we want to go even one step further. Not only take objects that are polluting valuable orbits around Earth back, make them re-enter. We want to go a step further, and we want to go to a circular economy in space. We want to do in-orbit servicing, or the new modern term, EU term is ISOS, in-space operations and servicing. And here we would also like to closely cooperate with the EU, with the stakeholders. This is a matter of sustainability, a matter of efficient operation in space. Looking forward also to contributing to ISOS in the EU. So all in all, space safety is well supported, is very much developing dual-use capabilities, and so we have to implement it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And focusing on the subject of dual use, I'm moving to you, Chiara. I mean, Neuraspace is really becoming an enabler of a secure and safe environment. You are monitoring hundreds and hundreds of satellites daily. So my question for you, if we are talking about dual use, are we really able to identify the concrete user cases when looking at security and defense purposes? And then actually, what are the driving for developing that, and what are the needs that will need to be taken into account in terms of design, in terms of data requirement, in terms of operational concept?
Thank you very much, Zara. Good afternoon, and from my side, also thank you for staying and listening to us. So, in a sense, Rodolphe was saying it quite nicely. We went from SSA and SST, us having to say why it's sort of a nice to have, but we kind of need to have it, and we're now, indeed, it's become an absolute need, right? And with that, the user needs have changed. So we went from a situation where we wanted to understand what, who's up there and which objects are up there. Originally, it was really a lot about also observing more dead objects than alive objects. There was always, obviously, the dimension of defense, but it was, let's say, a lot more about observing also dead objects. And now, of course, because space is becoming intrinsically linked to everything that we're doing on ground as well, and itself is becoming, I don't like to use the word a battlefield, but the potential is there, then, of course, the user needs evolve with that, right? So we have, I would say, we have the element of assuring mission continuity and operationality, right? So, and it's not just about stuff in orbit, but, also elements on ground. Who is doing what, but how is that affecting me, either in orbit or on ground, right? So that's certainly one of the aspects. The other aspect is who is behaving how, who's doing what that I may not be aware of, right? And could that potentially have side effects? And then there's definitely the aspect of escalation and also escalation management. I always say that there's always a dimension of, okay, something may have happened. Was it an accident or not? And how do I relate then to that? And the needs that come from that range from having to have persistence observation, very quick reaction times, right? So in the end, when it comes to security and defense needs, it's about having decision and action advantage and control, right? So again, persistence, quick reaction times from an operational point of view. When it comes to behavior analysis and prediction, it's about having lots of data. And we've heard we have good data partners. It would be nicer if we had ourselves as good data partners as well.
We'll come back to that.
Partners at the same eye level. And of course we need to be able to process that data with AI, machine learning methodologies and others, right? So physics informed models, you name it. And then there's the whole end-to-end interoperability, data integrity, pipelines, data pipelines, which are in real time, et cetera, et cetera. So these are, from my perspective, the three categories of needs and how they then also translate in, let's say, technology needs or building block needs at an operational level.
Thank you, and to touch upon many topics that I want to come back in a later stage, so thank you so much for that. So what we understood is that many of those capabilities lie really an intersection between civil, commercial, and defense. So my question is to you, Alberto, how we are really making sure that, for instance, capabilities that are developed for defense purposes or military purposes then are really can be used for civil capabilities, or the opposite. We are developing civil program then in a short, medium, long term can then be used for defense capabilities, but still we need to maintain a certain level of trust, reliability, and appropriate governance. So from an industry perspective, how we do that? And I mean, many of your products are in this level of intersection. So please.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for staying here. First of all, I want to apologize because I was yesterday with Aarti in another conference in Riyadh. I see that she did the right decision, not taking the flight at night and being here. Here I am, so I made the effort, but I'm super tired. So well, anyhow. So space sociability is a shared environment, so there are many actors acting on it, not only geographically dispersed. So we have been discussing this morning with the space commanders have been discussing on all this multilateral perspective, but also different type of actors, as you said, military, civilian, commercial, and not only that, also even research. And we have to take into account that there are many research actors or even academia, right, that have to also be taken into consideration. And we have been speaking about this trust that you mentioned, and these are the goals that we always put to commercial actors: trust, transparency, coordinate their operations, and there's obviously this in the end, the similar goals have to be also placed for institutional and military actors. So then, from the perspective of the technology, which is what we do at GMV, indeed. So from the very beginning, we tend to work on definition of technology that by definition and by design is dual use. For instance, now we are providing passive RF data to the USST. We are one of these commercial providers that Rodolphe mentioned before. But this data is also being provided to military users that do other activities with it, and the same data can be used also for alternative PNT or for science intelligence. So at the end, you can already design systems that are by definition dual use, and that can be used for different purposes. Sustainability, but also protection of space assets and even deterrence. And not only this, so we do a lot of software systems for cataloging, collision avoidance, and most of these systems we have developed with ESA and with the USST. These two guys are my two best customers. And all these systems that we have developed along with them, we learned a lot, and now we are putting them into operations also in the space domain awareness systems in Spain, in Germany, in the UK. In the end, and further evolving them, of course, making use of the European Defence Fund, hopefully also in the future with the Competitiveness Fund, and so on and so forth. But and just to come back to the USST, and because that's probably one of the main subjects to discuss today, and Rodolphe already mentioned it very nicely, that this is a good example of such a collaboration. The USST is making use of commercial data, also of military data from most of the radars that the USST is making use of are operated by militaries, and but we need still to do a lot of effort, I would say, right, Rodolphe? So we are not autonomous yet. We have a very, very strong dependency on US data, and taking into consideration the current geopolitical situation, we need to raise the bar one way or another. So it's the US Space Act is obviously appreciated as a very, very interesting initiative, but now we have to raise this level of ambition of the USST as a whole, and as Rodolphe said, try to make it become a full-scale space flagship program of the European Union, in order to be able to become really autonomous and not dependent on other geographies. So I would say that investments 1-2 orders of magnitude higher would be required in order to keep on catching up. So we have catched up a lot in the last years, as Rodolphe was saying, the last decade of the USST, but still we have a very relevant dependency of US data, and we need to make very relevant investments to keep on getting closer to the capabilities they currently have.
Thank you so much, and maybe I will go to Philippe from Astroscale. I would like to go one step further, and the idea is really like, okay, we are identifying programs or capabilities or services that are dual use, but then even when looking into funding from an industrial perspective, how we are making sure that we are able to synergize between what is the asset, what are the threats we need to protect against of, and what are the services that we need to develop in orbit. So like how we deal with this almost intersection, but then full synergy between developing the service and then complying with public programs.
Thank you, Sarah, for your question. It's actually true that Astroscale has invested a lot over the past years about cutting-edge technologies. But I don't want to talk today about technology. I want to talk about sustainability and how to synchronize assets and how to protect them. So the motto of our company has always been a safe and sustainable space for the next generation. So how to make it sustainable? You've just said the magical words, circular economy, and Rolf mentioned it as well. What is it to us? It's how to make, in very concrete words, how to make our assets in orbit. I'm talking of big satellites, big elephants for meteorology, environments, METOP, Copernicus, geo, telecom, commercial, defense, Earth observation, how to make them last longer. How and before answering the question, let me make 2 observations. If you want to make a satellite last longer, you can eventually refuel it. Under the condition it is refuelable. So it means that you think of it in advance before launching it. If you want to repair a satellite in orbit, which you are not capable to do today and maybe not tomorrow, you need to make it mendable. I mean, you need to invent a concept in which you can, say, plug and play a new component to repair it, which is not where we are today. So you need to make it mendable. So I'm not going to take too long to get to my point. If you want to make it possible, effective, we need to design our systems for, satellite assets and the services in the meantime. It has to be done in the meantime. So it's not a revelation, but if we want to synchronize and make use of our money the best way, the most effective, we have to do that in the meantime. And so it's not an evolution, it's a kind of revolution, not around the Earth this time. And so it means one holistic approach, one design, one schedule, one budget, one program. It's not where we are today, but this is, I think, if you think of jumps ahead, this is probably where we should get to.
Thank you. And if we look at it from a perspective of an emerging industrial player, what are the necessary measure and requirement then to move to effectively, especially through demonstration of project, to reliable operational services? What's the, again, magic formula that we need to think about? And I think as part of it, that there is definitely solid cooperation among those emerging industrial players. And I think the example of what has just been announced between Astroscale and Exotrail is definitely part of this broader discussion. So I will now ask you to comment on that, Jean-Luc.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. So the first point is that it was very interesting to start with the catalog data, STM topics, because I really insist on that here. They are key enablers of what we are going to tell about in-orbit servicing. There will be no effective, I would say, in-orbit servicing without this kind of capability. So it was a very interesting perspective to mix these two approaches. So when we are looking back in the mirror of history, space and space infrastructure, that is becoming a strategic one, there is no doubt on that. Probably space is going to follow the same steps done, let's say, maritime, air, rail in their time. The first phase is that you explore. Then you need to secure, then you need to regulate, and then you need to exploit properly. And I think that today we are in a shift between the exploration period and the securization and regulation period, in order to enter the next phase, and the final phase, that will be to exploit, on a more sustainable point of view, the space infrastructure as a whole. In orbit servicing, in my perspective, we are targeting this final step. Of course, potentially it will help to secure, but once again, in my perspective, I think in-orbit services are already there to transform the space infrastructure into something more sustainable, something that we are able to exploit. So that being said, on the let's say the initiatives around the in-orbit servicing, we have to say that Europe is one of the most advanced and active ecosystem in that topic. US, of course, is already very active. In Asia a bit also, with Japan. But the race is completely open for that, and especially from the perspective of the industry, we are not really, let's say, far from the other competitors, and that's very important to keep that in mind. We have let's say, a role to play in Europe, and the ecosystem is very active with emerging players for sure. But we have also, let's say, advanced skills in the incumbent player, because we also have the heritage of the ATV in Europe. ATV was the development of a capsule that was able to dock on the International Space Station. So I will maybe come back after that on the technology development that are still in front of us, even if the capabilities are there. But in Europe, we are quite advanced. The last point is that, okay, there are many initiatives around the in-orbit servicing. We have to say that the perspective in Europe is more to address that topic through a sustainable approach and even a commercial approach. When you are analyzing the different programs that are here in ESA, at the European Commission, but also through different national programs, they are mainly all targeting sustainable and commercial use cases. End-of-life management in LEO, extension of life in GEO, and so on. In US, the perspective is completely different. It's a defense perspective. US is preparing to act in space, and all the in-orbit servicing programs are, let's say, prepared through that perspective. So it's interesting also to compare the two approaches. And we touch here the point that in-orbit servicing are, by essence, dual capabilities. When we speak about in-orbit servicing, we could speak about action in space. That's exactly the same thing. So that's being said, the last point is that, okay, there are many initiatives in Europe, and view from the industry, the point is that it's time to move from ambitions to real execution. And that's exactly why we have announced this partnership with Astroscale. We think that even on the paper we could appear as competitor, we think that it's the, let's say, the best time to think about alliances in order to accelerate and to prove to the market that these capabilities are going to be real in a short period of time.
Thank you. So, and that's really a question for all of you, and I mean, you touched already upon a lot of what will be following, but so if until a few years ago it was more how to make the space environment sustainable, this is really more translating how to make the space environment secure for Europe. So as the security and defense landscape is changing, there is also a need to kind of find a way of prioritizing investment in terms of SDA, in terms of in-orbit servicing, in terms of space surveillance. So how this prioritization should be happening on the public side, and what level of additional collaboration and partnership is needed on the industrial side to create efficiency in this regard. The reply could also be that actually what we are doing right now, it's fine and enough, and we don't need additional investment. But if this is not the case, what are the next steps? And it's really open to all of you. So, Rodolphe, perfect.
Just to say that indeed, if you look what was done in the previous space regulation and what is done today, you see a clear evolution. And this is basically Commission listening to the reality. What is very important to say that in the domain of SST, when you talk about the military side, is SDA, Space Domain Awareness, and this is an area for member states, okay? All the elements related to intelligence, all the elements, so this is member state business, and it's very important. However, and this is very important, first, as I said, SST, in a way, has been the first flagship where we are working on the day-to-day basis with military people. They are sitting at the steering committee. A lot of data, most of the data are coming from the, let's say, military sensors. So we have a knowledge, a know-how how to do it. It's true as well that when you have a perfect mapping of the sky of any type of object, this is something that can be used by the military, but not by us. And this is very important. And there you have a lot of projects which were as well launched by EDF, for example, to show the military elements with integral, with surround, with emissary. So we are really trying to push for that. Then the in-between, let's say, military and civil is, let's say, the resilience. And there we have in EUSA, in the European Space Act, we are pushing for more resilience in space because we think that it's very important, and the resilience part is at the heart of any Union space program. If you look for IRIS², for example, to Galileo, this is really a cornerstone element. So here, basically, we are in a changing environment, and I think the Commission is aware of that. The Commission is adapting very well to that, using different and other methods and ways to finance, because we need as well to respect the competence of the member state there.
Rolf? Yes, please.
Looking at the state of the world, I believe it's obvious that we are getting a reality check these days from the West and from the East. So it's a wake-up call to strive for more independence. So to put it in real terms, to begin with, we are dependent on collision warnings today that we are getting from the US. And indeed, what we need is an independent space objects catalog. We are working on it since a while. And I believe the notion is there that we need independence. The competence is there. The money is there. The determination, everything is there. We need to do it. So it's, I guess it's the best situation we can be in. Let's work for more European independence with our great industry that we have in Europe. Thank you.
Chiara?
So indeed, Rolf is saying let's be as strong as we can be. So I couldn't agree more. From an industry perspective, my wish would be for us to have, let's say, more operational services. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is actually really understanding what the end user needs are, right? Of course, we need more investments, but for me, at the origin is really understanding what we need so that we can translate that then in technologies and products that we provide. And then everything, obviously, for me, derives from that, right? Of course, we need more data. Of course, we need to extract more intelligence. But only if we go into in a real operational mentality, right? What are our workflows? What do we need to get at the end? What does the commercial operator really need on a day-to-day basis to make sure that the company's profitable without having to worry about what's happening up there? Or what do future companies that are looking into the sustainability of the future and also, doing action in space, what do they need? So putting the end user at the front and working back and saying, okay, what do we have to develop in order to for that to happen? So my ultimate wish is really looking at more operational understanding, end user needs and services.
And I would say that this is something that we have always done, right? Because as we had some scarce resources, let's put it that way, and we were somehow behind some other geographies, again, let's put it that way, we have always been somehow trying to provide the user what they actually need based on what we could have access to. So for instance, we have a lot of reliance on US data, that's a fact. But on the opposite, we are providing collision avoidance services from the USST free of charge, as Rodolphe was mentioning, which have been valued by the operators very, very remarkably, way better than those provided by the US. So we have probably been able to talk to the operators and see what they actually needed in order to provide what they actually did with what was at our hand. And now probably what we need is to go even a step beyond. So it's not only that, is now that we know what they need, now that we know what they actually want, do this autonomously. Let's face it, at the moment we are not yet autonomous, and while at the same time, and I agree with Rolf, we need to take advantage of this potential multilateralism, is it the right word? So exploit collaborations with many allies as much as possible, so that we can exploit not only our capabilities but also theirs while still being autonomous. And yes, just wanted to remark something else, which is the education. I think it's terribly important. We have a scarceness of talent at the moment in Europe overall, and it's particularly important also to invest not only in technology. We spoke about technology, deploying sensors, etc. We also have to invest in education. It's particularly important to promote STEM education because we will need a lot of girls, boys that are now studying to come and work with us in the space domain so that we will be able to make all these plans that we're discussing about come true in the future.
Would you like to add anything, please?
Yeah, so once again, let's say perspective from the industry and on a technological point of view especially, the in-orbit servicing will be also unlocked thanks to the proximity maneuver and docking technologies. And that's a bit frustrating, to be honest, coming from the industry, because all of this technology, once again, already exists. It's more than 40 years that we know how to dock to a space station, but there is a need to miniaturize the technology and to transform that technology into a competitive product. The in-orbit servicing will be really, let's say, something real, I would say, when we will have miniaturized and transform that technology into a competitive product. And that's exactly the, let's say, the objective of the company as we are here today. But I'm going to take a parallel. In Exotrail, we started our history by developing propulsion technology, because that's one of the first key enablers of mobility in space. It took us 10 years to start from the technology. It was an already existing technology for big satellites. 10 years to come from a technology development to an industrial product that we are able to deliver at scale, because industrial topic is also something very important if we really want to scale that market. And so the risk today with the in-orbit servicing and this kind of, let's say, enabling technology, that is, we are potentially in front of years of development. And once again, it's exactly the reason why we have decided to partner with Astroscale. Because we are at a time that companies as Exotrail, we have developed the propulsion system, we have developed a platform with a very high mobility, but we don't want to re-enter it into a 10 years R&D effort to develop these technologies, because we have some companies that are focused on that. And so that's really, once again, the best time to start to think about let's partner. And maybe a warning, and I will finish with that. We have to be very careful, and I think at European level, not to build too complex programs around in-orbit services. For sure, we need a framework, but the risk is that it's going to take too long to start to address real use cases that are here on the table, end-of-life management and life extension. So we have to be very careful to, on top of the framework, and I fully understand that we need a big framework at European level, we need also to foster initiatives and small initiatives, I would say. We need to start small. We need to learn and we need to iterate. We need to do that in sequence. And that's the role of the industry for that. And that's the role of the emerging player as we are. Because we are keen to take risk and we are keen to invest in that, because we trust that the market is in front of us.
Okay, I'm going to give you in 1 minute the Astroscale version of the teaming, which is quite complementary, don't worry, Jean-Luc, to what you have just said. Yes, we have to keep humble. It's very difficult. In space, we have more failures than success. And that's what we learned from the history. So it's not we have to keep it simple. It's complex enough to choose our battles. And it's exactly what we have done with Exotrail. We have decided this teaming because we want to concentrate not on what we are good at, what we are the best at. Because you need to be the best to consider it and turn it into a commercial service, because the objective is to turn it not into a demo, it's to turn it into a commercial service. So it's not only sustainable, it has to be safe, and you need to make money with that. So to make sure of it, you have to concentrate. It's a lot of investment, a lot of energy. You have all of this in Europe, that it's clear that it's time for industry to think of focusing on what we are good at.
Thank you. Two quick follow-up questions, and I'm really curious about especially the public side. So one important point that was mentioned by several of you is really this data dependency, especially when looking at the US. So, I mean, we are working in a situation where really who has the data has somehow also the power. And it's not about full independence. We don't need to do everything on our own, but we want to sit at the table with certain level of negotiation power. And this really requires at least autonomy. So how we are tackling that? What are the incentives and measures that will be immediately needed to kind of start dealing with this dependency? And then a comment on, do we need to be simple, humble, or at least like how translate, we need to be, what's the mechanism that will allow us to be flexible? Because I think that's the thing, it's like not having programs that are too complex will allow that to evolve with the current situation and to be flexible on what will be the future user needs. So 2 comments on these 2 questions. I don't know who wants to start.
I can make it. I think we have already gone through this, not such a complex system. This step we have already walked this way for 10 years, as Rolf was saying. I think now we have to reach the level of ambition, think big, and as you said, sit on the right table with the right arguments to also negotiate and promote this multilateralism. Obviously, you can negotiate and get access to certain capabilities that your allies have in case you also can put something similar on the table. And I think that Europe should be now targeted at reaching that level of ambition in terms of sensors, counting on a large system, and probably keep on being federated as it is now, or not, but have a way larger system than it is now. And we already have the means to do so. It's not about technology. I think in terms of technology, we have demonstrated that we already count on the technology required to achieve this level of ambition. It's more about doing the right investments to deploy this technology, so do more deployments. Now we already achieved super high TRL levels in all technologies required, and in many of those technologies we are already ahead even of the US. But now it's the time to do the right investments to deploy these technologies and counter of higher capabilities.
Thanks, Rodolphe. I see your...
Yeah, just to say that we are preparing for that. I mean, within SST, you have a huge part related to research. We are investing in the new type of sensors. We are pushing as well for the space-based SST, for example. In other sectors like ISOS, I mean, the new pilot mission on ISOS shows that we want to do concrete things, and all these need to be done through research. And therefore, we have been clear since the beginning when we are working very well with the US, and this is very important at the technical level, is really something very important to underline on SST. And what we are providing today is, as you said, a sort of middleman based on this is catalog. But since the beginning, we are investing, and we are clear we need to be more autonomous. And indeed, this is something that is will be a value added for everybody if we are.
Yeah, let's be honest and not kid ourselves. We are dependent on the US when it comes to space surveillance and tracking, to an objects catalog. So I'd like to say we are dependent on a phone call from our US friends telling us that we are on collision course. I know what I'm talking about because we are operating satellites 24/7. And this is, first of all, thank you, US, for your great partnership. But thank you, EU, for pushing EU SST and for working towards a catalog. So we need it soon. And we have the capabilities, we have the money, let's do it. So what else? I mean, ITA is also an issue where we are dependent on the US. So it's easy to talk about independence, but it's hard. It's harder than we think, I believe, to really get it done. Thank you.
Thanks. Jean-Luc?
Yeah, maybe for the in-orbit servicing perspective, I'm pretty sure we have everything in Europe to be completely independent from US. We have everything. We have the technologies, we have the talent, we have the investment, as soon as we are not too fragmented. So that's very clear. But let's not forget 2 points. The regulation for the coming in-orbit servicing market will be very, very important. And it's also, let's say, something that will help to sit at the table of the new, let's say, the new power around the world. The EU Space Act is, let's say, a hot topic today. We need to move forward on that because it's completely also an enabler of the in-orbit servicing. And the last point is standardization. For in-orbit servicing too, if we really want to develop the market at some point, we will need to have standardized interface. So Europe has also a play to do in that field to help, let's say, the standardization discussion that are around the world today in place.
Thank you. So I'm concluding with last question, really, really simple, really, really quick. So what is the one thing we absolutely we should do now?
Get an own European space objects catalog as soon as possible.
Rodolphe?
Well, we have to look to the reality, and the reality is December, it was announced by China, 200,000 new filing, ENGSO, adding to the 1.3 million already existing. facing the 140 million debris floating around. So yes, we have to act. I think we put in motion things. We have a catalog, not as best as the US, like we always say. But we are working with research, with industry to make it better and to have a better one. But altogether, what we need is sensors. Why US is so good with a catalog? Because they have very good sensors. And these sensors, why they are very good sensors, is not for space. They are military sensors, radars, which are not meant to look to space debris. They were meant for something else. And while waiting for the something else, they are looking to debris. So this is the point. We need now to decide where we want to sit at the table, or even if we want to sit at the table. So now is a decision to be taken all together, and I think the message is clear on our side, on the side of the Commission. I mean, SST is a must-have if we want to go on to exist in space.
Clear. So, Chiara, and I will ask you to be
really not even a full sentence. So it's decision and action advantage operationality. Big words, but I think they encompass everything that was said.
I see.
Okay, I would start by the beginning, probably a stable regulation and standards in order to and have the sustained investments in order to achieve the required actions to be able to have a safe and sustainable space in the future.
Thank you.
I'll be very quick, and I will give you, let's say, a more dual perspective to finish, because defense is probably also going to be a strong enabler in the coming years. One of the new doctrine of the defense is speed over perfection. So let's start simple and let's iterate from the very beginning.
So you took my point, defense. So 3 words: prepare for revolution.
Okay. Thank you so much all for joining me today. We'll ask the audience a big round of applause, and thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it as always. Thank you, Rodolphe.
Here we are. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're about to start our last session of the day in the Silver Hall. So I would welcome those of you who want to follow the session to find your seats, and otherwise you're free to continue networking outside of the hall. And so the next session will be on capital and competitiveness, a very, very important topic, closing off our discussions here at the European Space Conference. And it's my great pleasure to welcome, well, introduce actually our moderator for this panel, Emma Gatti.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the last session of the Silver Hall. We're closing the day. We saved the best for last. How are you doing? Are you awake? Good. Stay with us because we're going to speak about money now, so I think it's going to be interesting. Okay, so my name is Emma, I'm Space News, and allow me to invite our panelists on stage. First panelist, Tobias Gotthardt, State Secretary, Bavarian State Government, Bavarian Ministry of Economic Affairs, Regional Development and Energy. Tobias, welcome on stage. Thank you very much. Our second speaker is Fiammetta Diani, Head of Market, Downstream and Innovation at EUSPA. Fiammetta, welcome on stage. Thank you. And then we have in Giancarlo Granero, Head of UNOOSA Economy at DG DEFIS European Commission. Giancarlo, welcome. Thank you very much. And then Gianluigi Baldesi, Head of Ventures and Financing Office at the European Space Agency. Welcome, Gianluigi. Thank you. Charles Beigbeder, Founding Partner at Expansion Ventures. Thank you, Charles. Welcome. And last but not least, close the list of Italians filling the panel, Giovanni Sylos Labini, Chief Executive Officer at Planet Italia. It's going to be an Italian planet with a couple of guests. Okay, welcome everyone. We're having 53 minutes to keep you awake. We spoke a lot about investment, about speed, about the need of Europe to catch up. And I think now is the time to understand how we can catch up, because obviously we all need an ingent influx of funds. And today we speak about funds specifically for the industry. So we speak about how the European Commission, the European institution can somehow mobilize those funds as fast as possible to allow the industry, the European industry, to grow as fast as possible, to catch up and to fill up the gaps that have been discussed in the past couple of days. So let's start from the institutions, because today we're discussing how from the institution we can reach the market and what's the market perspective. How effective are public institutions in sustaining the European space market? We can have the impression and the opinion of a national institution with Tobias, and then maybe we can move to listen what the European Commission can say and then what EUSPA. So maybe we can start with you, Tobias. Thank you.
Thank you for the word. I would say that in general, institutions, public institutions are the backbone of development, especially in the space market. That's the role they have to play. The question is whether they play the role in every corner as they should do it. Europe has provided the past centuries a lot of institutions that help a lot. Let's take the EIB group, for example, and the programs like ETCI, TechEU, or InvestEU, that are state programs that help to develop innovation. And the core of the core role of the institutions and the instruments is not to be in the main role, because they can't deliver the money you need for the main role. But what they can do is to de-risk the market and to anchor private funds and bring them together by building cross-border platforms. So in total, I'm convinced also from our regional side, from Bavaria, we also have tried to scale this down on the regional level. You might know that Bavaria is a strong aerospace hub in Europe. We have a lot of companies to develop. We have a lot of unicorns or soonicorns. And therefore we, for example, created Bayern Capital, which is a private equity fund company, a state-owned one, but playing on the market. And we gave around around 1 billion euro into the capital into this instrument, with the possibility to support one company by a maximum 50 million euro. And this is what I said is an instrument to catalyze the process. And I think this is what we have to deliver as a state, especially in the space sector, to catalyze processes and to help to build trust in our companies, to bridge this valley of death and the problem that we still have a lack of private money in the market. If you take for example, exit strategies of the companies and the ones, not the less ones who have made it to the market, you'll see that 30 to 50% minimum of the money that is spent into them comes not from European money but from the US sector. So there is also the need for the public side to be the one, a trust builder into our companies, and to use our instruments we can afford to help the process.
Thank you, Tobias. Giancarlo, Tobias showed us a national perspective. The Commission works on a different scale, so can you explain us what is your perspective from a Commission point of view when it comes to mobilizing capitals?
Yes, indeed, the Commission works on a different scale. Maybe it's useful to remind us what is the scale, in the sense that, you know, in Europe, most of the source of the public funding is national. So, I mean, in Bavaria, we are speaking about a very big actor in space, a very important one. Big contribution to Germany, and in turn, Germany is, I think, the second biggest, but one of the big players. So, at the EU level, we do have clearly an effect of the top layer. At the same time, let's have the right parameters. We are not managing most of the public budgets in the EU, but what we can do, and we try to do effectively, I think, is to generate the public demand for European systems, and there we have the well-known and world-class systems, and there clearly the EU level represent the public demand. On top of it, what we are trying to do more and more is to aggregate this demand to overcome the fragmentation of our governance, because of course we are, in a system where there are many actors, shared competences, etc. So by aggregating demand, we can also ease and mobilize more effectively the public capital. What we can also do, and we committed in various documents to do more and more and hopefully more effectively, is to use procurement. And I think this has been addressed in many panels and conversations I heard. One example is clearly the Copernicus contributing missions, where I think we have found an effective and successful way of using procurement to also stimulate the creation, the new entrants, and playing the anchor customer role for this company. Of course, with procurement, there is a lot of things we can do, and we will certainly experiment, including pre-commercial procurement. We can do it according to our financial regulation, but maybe here it's useful to remind something. If you want to build systems which are resilient, and especially if they have to deliver on security needs, etc., that's not the type of procurement you want. So we have to also be clear on what is feasible where. And this, if you want, is what we can do on the demand side. Of course, there is a lot of things that we do, and we can do on the, what I would say, the offer side, which is stimulating the creation, the growth of companies, and attracting private capital, where we are really lagging behind many competitors. And there we have our program, which I think is considered as very successful by many. That's Cassini, where one of the many features of Cassini is an investment facility. We channel the funds through the European Investment Fund. which in turn co-invest with European venture capital funds, and they invest into companies. So it's a rather indirect way of operating. I mean, the question of how the public shapes the market, well, we try not to. We try the market to run its own course, but we try to intervene where we see failures. And I think Cassini has been very effective. We have now 19 venture capital funds investing in space companies. Not all of them are really only specialized in space, but that's, compared to a few years ago, that's a big change. And I think we are, as you said, we are really creating trust and catalyzing this process.
Thank you very much, Giancarlo. So, Fiammetta, Giancarlo gave us a perspective of the European Commission, more on the upstream part, but you work with the downstream. Where do you see the role of the institution when it comes to the downstream market?
Yes, indeed, because when we think space, we always think a bit upstream. It's a kind of reflection, especially in this conference, you can sense it. However, the real value of the space economy is still downstream. I mean, if we look at the numbers, the famous trillion that everybody quote here, we will see that there is a lot of downstream in it. So in how we use the space data and the space services and make them products in our, let's say, businesses. So this is where we try to focus. So for example, Cassini, that was mentioned by Giancarlo, that is where, as EUSPA, we are the right arm of the Commission in implementation. We do not only have space companies upstream, but we have many startups that are downstream or they are fully integrated. And for example, in this moment, we have opened 2 opportunities that I ask you to take note and to help us to spread the voice, because I think we are here also for this reason, for this multiplication effect. We have opened the Cassini Challenges that will close the 26th of March. That is a global challenge for startups, and we ask them the minimum viable product. And participating to the Cassini Challenge is exactly this catalyzation effect. I see here some faces, we were chatting, that participated to our challenges. So you raise the capital after, maybe this is not the reason why you participate in the challenge, is not just for the prize. And we have also opened our business accelerators that will close on the 6th of March for more mature startups. So please spread the voice. But just to give the link with the investment, we made some calculation because we are at the beginning of the year. So, and the companies that were involved in these activities, they raised almost 1 billion of capital in 46 rounds. So it's quite of a number. It's a way to mobilize the private capital. We hope to mobilize even more, of course, but this is a good starting point that we have in place, and not limited to upstream, but also to downstream and to the fully integrated. And maybe I will open up a bit the discussion. We have started to work even closer, the 3 institutions, because you are making us this question, how the institution can do it. And we, let's say, reinforced our cooperation as European Commission, EUSPA, and European Space Agency, the commercialization area. My colleagues will comment on it. And we present ourselves together to the startups, to the investors world, especially for the investors, aiming at a common network of investors in space, so that we can offer even a stronger and more coherent offer to attract even more capital in space.
Thank you, Fiammetta. So, but we still have some challenges because we know that there are some problems. So I would like to hear the opinion of the commercial sector when it comes to what are the challenges? Are we discussing about simply raising funds? We're discussing about improving risk appetite, which is an interesting concept because it comes also from the mentality, from a European mentality. If you allow me a comment after 2 days, what I noticed as a journalist is that we have in very young and medium scale startup, which have kind of high tolerance for risk, that they're ready to put themselves on the edge and try to risk something. While when you look at bigger corporates that have been here for 20, 30 years, they have a much lower risk appetite. So I think it would be interesting to understand how you change that mentality. Or maybe just streaming the investment. Maybe the problem is in deployment mechanism, but maybe I would like to hear the point of view of those who work in the capital investment and in the commercial sector. Giovanni, what do you think? What are the challenges here?
Well, few words, because we are a strange beast in the town, because we relatively few months ago we made a merge between Planetech Italia, that was a bootstrapped company in 30 years, with the Orbit, that is an heavily venture capital funded company. And just last week we closed a D round of 110 million of financing. So where we believe that we need, because we are a service company, we need government support. In the fact that the largest part of the demand of our service is a public demand. So more than volume of funding, we need a predictable demand of service. In this, this is the main point to attract serious investments in our company. And there is still a long march that government in Europe and also the Commission must take before this really happen, because even the anchor tenancy for example, a sector that I know very well, that is Earth observation downstream service, we have very few examples of long-term demand, few examples of regulation that is perspective for the use of Earth observation in imposing regulation. And all these are things that, for our experience, is strongly evaluated by potential investor in our business, in our activities. You made, I don't remember who made the example of the dynamic purchase system for data for the Copernicus cooperation mission. For example, is completely missing a similar platform for providing also service and not only data in this area. And as correctly said before, the real beef is in the value-added service.
Charles, your perspective.
Well, I think first we have to talk about Europe a little bit and the global landscape. We are not the US, and especially in investment. And you know, we have a lot of savings, but most of them are invested in fixed rate products or real estate. Only 10% are invested in equities, compared to 45% in the States. So apart some country like Sweden, and by the way, hello Ulf, my co-founder of Expansion Ventures, it's an exception. Most European countries are still very lagging behind in terms of taking risk. And so we don't have the billionaires investing in deep tech. And so we are talking about here space tech, defense and space. It's still for many capital managers, I mean, a very risky area. They don't understand. So there is a huge work, and obviously here the people today and yesterday, they are all aware of what's going on in this huge industry and the fantastic changes and the opportunities. But most of our colleagues in other industries and in financial industry, they totally ignore the opportunities. So there is a huge role to explain to them the opportunities and the fact that space is there, is becoming a normal sector, it's getting privatized, it's getting also militarized, and so there are many opportunities. And now, so given the situation, apart this huge effort in information, there is an effort in well, it was great that, yeah, DG DEFIS, EIF, ESA also, we'll give you the micro, were put in place programs to counter this this deficit of offer in terms of space investing, because it's also most of the business is downstream, but the companies we are accompanying now, they are developing infrastructure, they are developing hardware with software, of course. They are developing infrastructure assets, and it's capital intensive, it's risky, it's deep tech, and it's difficult to finance. And given the situation in terms of what I said about the savings and the way they are invested in Europe, there was a strong need for public support, clearly, and that was a very good idea, especially for space. So we were able to launch this fund. We started 4 years ago, and we had our first closing 18 months ago for 140 million dedicated to aerospace and defense. It's early stage venture, and we are following very carefully 23 portfolio companies in all fields. Some of them are here, and I mean, it works. It works. I would like also to underline that it's also about, it's not only financial support in funds and in companies, it's also about public procurement, of course. It has been said several times, and I'm happy to also understand that the new mechanisms will be put in place shortly by DG DEFIS. That's great, for access to space, for data from observation and maybe telco as well. So we need to aggregate the different offerings of our portfolio companies, or all new space companies and all space, so that they are better known by the whole market, and in order to be in a position to cope with what we are. Okay. I mean, with the trend at the moment, which is to be more European and stop maybe shopping around across the Atlantic in these difficult times.
In this difficult moment. So, Gianluigi, Charles said that the situation of private investment in the US and Europe is radically different, which is true. In your view, what needs to change to improve the investor confidence in Europe?
Let's see. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's a very good question. And with my office, it's called the Venture and Financing Office. We have created in 2021. And I remember when we were looking at, let's say, the private capital raise at that time was below 500 million. The situation has improved a lot. Let's start, let's say, for the awareness. We were starting building capacity building events to explain to investors in a very pragmatic way and try to play the institutional role. And we were doing this with already 3 years ago with the DEFIS and the EUSPA. We're organizing very nice capacity building. We're showing what is the market, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats. And I remember when we met Charles, there were Ted from Room Capital. They started to join forces during one of these capacity building. So now the sector has changed a lot. And of course, we are talking about not really improving pitches, or, as was said yesterday, we are not sending PowerPoint in space. To build the confidence of the investors, it's really we need to show many things. if we start from, let's follow, I mean, the investor is not strange. You know, very early stage, the investors meeting is investing in people, in the team. So really seed in that area. So, you know, what we are doing is really helping to attract the talent. With the ESA big program that we have across Europe, try really to build the capital, to attract talent that maybe were working in other sector, coming in space or coming back to space. The second element is Series A, and Series A you need traction. And how you get traction? You need to increase the TRL of the project, or the product and the service. That's something that they can fly. You can have pilots when you can try to see that there is some customers. And last but not least, you know, you want to scale, and we are talking about scaling now. And what we need to really to build the confidence. I think the sector itself, when we start, was very difficult to attract investors. Now, with our, let's say, single ESA investor, we have 90, now we join forces, so we have, I think I saw the number, more than 200 financial institutions that are interested to consider investment in space, going from very niche VC to more generalist, large VC, and nowadays, even commercial banks. We have in our network Intesa, Deutsche Bank, Natixis, and so far, so forth, UBS. So the problem is really, as Giovanni was saying, the investors are looking for really to, they are ready to take some risk. However, you know, depend on the phase, as I was explaining to you before. And the more we can put activity, not only support the creation of disruptive technology, but really to shaping a new market, elements that, you know, foster the R&D activity, foster the development of infrastructure, and fostering really a stable demand, not only coming from the public sector, but also from the private, is key. Therefore, you know, this is the kind of element that we are trying to do, really try to work together, as Fiammetta announced, you know, really to join forces in the frame of the Cassini. Maybe just a quick example to be very specific. For instance, in order to help company generate revenue, we created this ESA marketplace. So it's a tool which allows company to attract customers. So in the first cycle, we placed 25 contracts. We enabled 50 million transactions. This company that were facilitated by this tool to attract their customer raised 400 million in one year. So the question is really, when you start to see that there are contracts, that there is a flow of what are the priority, as Joseph mentioned after the ministerial, and what are the tools that we are putting in place, not only support R&D, but the infrastructure, but also the stimulation of demand, you see that investors are coming, even large banks.
Thank you, Gianluigi. Let's go back to a national dimension. Bavaria, as we mentioned before, has a very strong space dimension. Where do you, Tobias, sees the major investment gaps? Where do you see the mismatch between the available capital and the actual needs of the European company?
I would say the problem is really the risk-based strategy of the private market. We need to bring, or let's say the other way around. We have no lack in Europe, no lack of innovation, no lack of ideas, no lack of creative and strong companies or startups. Thank you. We just need to bring them together with the market, and we need to stimulate the market. We have said a lot of things already that have to be changed. I mean, we can mourn a lot about it if we don't change it. We will not create 27 pension fund systems in Europe that are comparable to the pension fund systems, for example, in US. This has to come from the nations and the markets itself. What we can do is, for example, one thing we have at the moment in Europe, 27 capital markets with 27 regimes, different rules, and this means if you take the cost for transfer of money to invest in other companies in Europe, you have to pay around 35 to 40% more than in the US, where you have the common market. This would be a simple thing on the European level to create the one and only capital market, to make it easier to go to let capital go around. And I only can repeat what I said in the first question. What we do in Bavaria is really to try to give this impulse, to catalyze and to build the trust in our companies, to make the companies, for example, also visible, because you can imagine that the space market is not the first market someone is thinking of to invest, if he wants to invest in startups or growing or scale up companies. That's also one thing what we have to deliver as politicians, but also as the state administration, to create a forum where possible investors get together with the ideas and the companies, the startups on the market. You said the same from the EUSPA perspective. So it's a lot to do, and I think what we just have to try in Europe is one thing, by the way, that is I see a problem as a problem in general in Europe. We are really good in naming problems, but we have to get better and quicker in solving the problems. Not only naming the problems and then talking about having task forces and working groups about this, and then the process gets lost in a very long and complicated process. We have to decide, to act, to change things, to get the market running. I think this is in the end the one and only abracadabra we need behind the problem we have.
Let's organize a task force to discuss
that. But then a chaka task force. You have to.
An action task force. Okay, Giancarlo, Gianluigi mentioned the Series A delicate moment. I wanted to discuss with you a bit about where do you think the system breaks down, because in Europe there is usually a good early stage innovation, but then the problem becomes when we scale up. So where do you think that the real problem is? Is at the Series B level, maybe at the first large contracts level, or maybe even just when it's about to access the global market?
Yes, thanks. Well, maybe first I would like to say that luckily the system doesn't systematically break down. I think the example Gianluigi made is a positive one. I heard here during these 2 days many other examples of companies who managed to grow and even to scale up within Europe with, if not exclusively, at least largely European funds. So we do have success stories, and maybe this is part of the narrative that we should try also to, change, or rather see the glass half full rather than half empty. But of course, you're not wrong. The system does sometimes break down, and I think it is widely recognized that in Europe we are very good at research, we are very good at development, we are very good at creating innovation, to the point that maybe you can even make a business model out of that and out of subsidies, which is not what we wish, of course. We are less effective in scaling up and doing commercialization, really making money. Yeah, it was said, I think, earlier. You have to make money out of it. We don't do space only today for the future of humanity and exploration and scientific curiosity. We want to do space to make money, and that's why now I'm a bit afraid of say we have a joint team because it sounds like a task force. But I wanted to, to reinforce what Gianluigi and Fiammetta said, because indeed we are trying on this, on commercialization, on helping companies to grow and to have a market, to have a business and to sell their products and services. We are trying to do it as one. Also, we are 3 organizations. It will be at least a simplification and I hope an improvement for the companies and for the investors. So I think it's very good. I'm well entouré. It's true that we are all Italians, but it was by accident.
Yes, it is. Yes, now you ruined everyone with this task force thing. Everyone feels to be.
And maybe just to add on it's true that the other elements you mentioned are also, of course, challenging. The big contract, I think we said it, okay, we try to be an anchor customer, but it's not always easy, and of course, we are not also full of ideas, so we are also listening very much to the ideas and the proposals of the industry and of the member states. And on the access to global markets, maybe just to mention that we are starting a work in a more consistent way with our delegations around the globe, so that they can spot procurement opportunities in those areas of the world, and we can try to make them more transparent for our European industry.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Of course.
Yeah. Because just to pursue on the discussion on the financing, in fact, we have to understand we need a continuum from creation to IPO and beyond. And so it's true that first we should say that 30 years ago there was absolutely nothing. And now we have, I think, an efficient early stage financing that works from creation to seed, Series A. That's okay. And it's quite efficient. There is some competition. There is a lot of players, even in difficult field like space or other in deep tech, in quantum technologies or in new nuclear. There are investors, and that's new. And there are a lot of people, talented people, wishing to create their firm, become entrepreneur, and there is an energy that we can all feel, and that's great. It was not the case even 20 years ago. So now we have then the problem is Series B, C, so late stage venture, and then IPO. So scale up. BC is late stage venture, then it's scaling up. So let's say, to take some figures, rounds of around 100 million are still very difficult in Europe, in the space field and in other fields, in deep tech sectors. They are very difficult because we don't have like 40 funds able to put tickets of 30 million at that moment of the life of a company, of a young company. We have 2. So it's not enough. So what does the player, the public, notably the public sector does? It's great because there is you have heard about the European Tech Championship Initiative, ETCI, so managed by EIF, and it's a strong willingness from some member states and the European Commission to give more power to the EIF to be able to put tickets around 200, 300 million in funds, in late stage funds that will total size will be like 700 to 1 billion, and then those guys. There will be, if there are more of those funds, then there will be more competition and more funds capable to accompany those and participate in this Series B, C. And then there is the next phase, so to become a worldwide champion, but you are still not profitable. We are talking about companies that are not profitable, because when they are profitable, you have other ways to finance, okay? So, but they are not profitable because they have to invest a lot, recruit, take risk, and there they need to raise 300, 500 million. And then again, then we have even less vehicle in Europe able to invest there. There are some initiatives. I mentioned the CEF initiative, Scale Up European Fund, which is which is targeting, which is a fund that at the beginning will be like 5 billion. With big European families, industrial families participating, with the EIB participating, EIC and some other public institutions, and of course, I hope big private institutions as well. And the target is to go up to 20 billion. So that fund, the CEF, they are at the moment selecting the ManCo for that fund. It will be based in Luxembourg, and so it's an interesting initiative. Of course, we would need several of that, but let's be positive. So I think it's a very interesting initiative. And then we have the stock market. The stock market, we all know, we have other talented Italians that wrote reports on the subject. I think Mr. Sella and Mr. Draghi, and they have mentioned that we are good in reports. That's true, but no, frankly, these reports now they just need to be implemented. So the 28th regime is part of that, and we just need now that we accelerate in terms of merging of stock markets, European stock markets, and central depositories as well, because it's execution of orders, of stock exchange orders is one thing, but you also need to take care of the delivery of shares and cash for the back office side. And at the moment, we have 17 DTCs and 23 markets. So we need to merge that very quickly, because otherwise the continuum will be imperfect and so inefficient.
So Giovanni, Charles mentioned the scaling up the continuum. From an investment and policy perspective, in your opinion, what are the main barriers preventing companies to reach success?
Well, on the point, again, on our experience on this, is that, as already told, we in Europe are very good at new venture innovation, but we have a limit when is the moment in which we must help in scaling up company. Consider we have a very nice measure in support of SMEs, and it's very good. I have been for more than 30 years a big supporter of SME. But consider that the Planetech and the Orbit, that was both SME, the second day after the merger, lose all the benefit of a PME. This is also, again, in the always recorded Draghi report. There are no true policies in support of the mid-caps. There are not instruments that favor the merge between different subjects, and this doesn't help in building a platform economy, especially in space, where you need exchange of value by different subjects in different areas. I have a lot of sympathy on one of the points made by Charles about this risk-adverse approach that we have in Europe. Our friends Musk, every day a starship explodes, is happy because he learned a lot of things. Maybe not this extreme is the best way, but again, to be more keen in exploiting innovation and take some risk, to be more keen than to regulation, to create a new market, is again something that we can do. And for example, in this sense, the new Space Act that was so many times recalled this day, if you compare it with the US Space Act, as a difference. Again, we need regulation. We heard the previous panel that is very important, but we need also some market opportunity enforced by this Space Act. Consider that the market creation, for example, the US space market explicitly mentioned an industry-first application by federal service. This is some good improvement that we can add to the evolution of this document.
Thank you. The US commercial part complained quite a lot about the first draft of the US Space Act. So, Gianluigi, a ESA perspective on where are the big barriers when it comes to scale up?
So, let's try to complement a little bit what is said, because I think it's pretty clear that we don't have an innovation problem. This is a problem of scaling, and from what we see, from the policy side, speaking with the company, with investor, I think is a question also, we need alignment. And because, at the end of the day, scaling up, why you need to scale up? What is the market? What is the need? Because this is also one of the points that maybe with the strong, let's say, what has happened in the last years, the big boost of after the invasion of Ukraine, there is more and more attention to the part of resilience, to defense. So there is an urgent demand to address that market. And there was, I think, was last year that there was a switch between what was spent in space in the civil, that was always higher than the defense side. So I think last year there was 50-50 or just pass, and now we have much more what is spent in space into the defense area than what is happening in the civil. This is worldwide. Of course, in Europe, we are still the civil part is still high, but is ramping up. So the question is really, as I was saying, the alignment. We need to understand, okay, what is the market, and also because the market has different dynamics. And the question is like, what is happening with defense is very urgent. So we need to hurry up. And therefore, in some cases, we see more and more other not European company entering and setting up premises also in Europe, which is somehow, it's a pity because we've been supporting the ecosystem quite a lot. The second point is also, of course, the investment. I mean, the latest data that we receive from our partner SP, we are talking about 1.3 billion investment in last year, 2025, very preliminary data, but it's the third years in a row that we have over 1 billion. It's important, but it's still a niche if you think about the big economy. And in order to move and to start to finance the infrastructure project, we need to change completely league. We need to change actors, and therefore we really need, let's say, to attract different financial institutions and try to understand what are the needs, and let's say, and try to accommodate with dedicated activity. We are doing studies, for instance, with the support of European Investment Bank, try to see how can possible partnership between the public and the financial world can support the development of new business in the Earth observation, in orbit servicing, because, the dynamic, how we share the risk of that big project. These are very, very complex activity that we were not somehow addressing maybe in depth. And the last part is also the company. I think is also, let's face it, not all the company has this ambitious growth. We speak more and more about TRL and not about the economics, the cash flow, the revenues, and so on. So, and the question is, just to summarize, I see the time is flying, is really the alignment of, the policy, the financial, and the company mindset is fundamental if you want to assure that scaling up is happening in Europe.
Fiammetta, is it alignment problem?
I wanted to bring you down to earth again. So while we change the European common market, the capital market, while we modify all these big things, we are doing something concrete, because what's the best things we can do for our companies to really be competitive and to attract capital is to make them fly alone, so to have their market. So let me go back to where we started, also with Giovanni. So concretely speaking, we launched the day before yesterday a new procurement. It's called Make It with Space. And the full concept is demand-driven. So we want to have demand out there that will make our companies fly. And how we do it, including space into operation of other sectors, so in energy, in construction, and so that's where we want to go. We want to aggregate the demand and to make the companies flying by themselves. And like this, if they have customers and if they have a market, they will attract more investors. And also the risk will look smaller than what it looks now. So that's a bit what we are doing. Have a look. It has been just published, so it's my news for today. And is a new initiative, demand-driven, that we also put in our vision for the space economy, and is one of the first things that we are doing in this direction. So sorry guys to to bring down to more concrete things and to our market and to our users, but I think this is the way we need to do to attract really the capitals. While we solve the big tickets and the common market and the common capital market, but that is important, and we can do a task force, but in the meantime, let's do something concrete.
Well, I think for the last 5 minutes, we can try to include everybody's perspective on this problem of where is breaking up. So maybe, Tobias, can you give us your opinion of where is this chain of scale-up not working? We heard very different opinions because everyone here is coming from a different angle.
Since I'm here as a regional politician, I want to focus in my last 3 sentences on the role of the regions in this game. Because as Bavaria, I can say, I mean, we don't have the strong regions in every country, but we have countries with strong regions. And my apply at this place is to include the regions in the whole space game, because you need them as transmitters to the companies. No one is closer to the startups. No one sees earlier than the regions what happens in the region with the space sector. And therefore, to have a success in this field, to bring investors together with institutions and the startups, the scale-ups, the regions can play a vital role, and we are ready to do this. And I just can say that from Bavarian side, we are in a close contact to many other very engaged space regions. We play a very active role in the European Committee of the Regions, and it's just a small role in the whole concept. But please use this role to make a difference and to make it even better running than it is today. And we will do also our small and day by day things to bring the thing together.
Yeah, it's not so small. Imagine that all the regions in Europe will buy products for climate mitigation, heat waves prevention, and they will put together and have kind of critical mass.
Yes, but I can tell you from the concrete experience, if we are allowed to do this following European rules, it's not so easy.
Giancarlo, last word.
Yeah, no, but I think, you know, if I try to drastically summarize, I see indeed, I think there is, what I heard from the industry is we need contracts, and of course they need financing, but they don't say the second, they say we need contracts, okay? So contracts they will get, indeed, if we manage to mobilize this potentially huge demand, which I agree can come in particular at the regional, local level. So we really have to do all we can to aggregate this demand and to make it emerge and make it with space. It's a small step in the right direction. And on the financing, I believe also what everybody has said, we are on the right track, but we are not yet at the right volumes. And for that, we need money at public level as well. So ESA has been successful in the ministerial conference. Let's see how successful we are for the MFF. We ask for 5 times as much money for space and defense. So that would help us a lot in that area.
Okay. Last words, if it's in 1 minute. 1 minute. Charles, you did not respond to a single one of my emails. You didn't respect the time slot, I swear.
It's
1 minute.
It's a plot. It's a plot. No, just coming back to space, I think a big subject is still access to space. Is how do we access the orbit? Not the orbit, but the orbit, sorry. Because especially in telco constellations, even in observation constellations, we know we will have to deploy thousands of satellites, the Europeans, in the coming years. And we know that we have maybe a competitive issue with Ariane 6 and the incumbent, let's say. And we know also, let's face it, that it's going to be tough to think that Falcon 9 or even Starship and Blue Origin will be the launchers for those thousands of satellites. Because, well, if you are Elon Musk, I'm not sure you want to launch the satellites that will compete with Starlink. Same with Amazon Leo. Just think about that. So we have a huge problem in access to orbit. It's still there, and okay, there are initiatives, but we have to hurry up.
Absolutely, and on this, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying with us and being brave until the last one. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Grazie mille. You are... Switch off my mic. Grazie mille.